Welcome to Business Success Tips, where we can learn how to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. So I have with me today Michael Cady from Cady Coaching, and he's going to tell you how to sell more stuff, as far as I know, right?
I'm going to try.
Okay. And tell me a little about your background and how you got into it and a little backstory for yourself.
Sure. I had done a lot of things prior. Started a couple businesses. I'd been, believe it or not, a process engineer for a long time, and stumbled into learning about sales and marketing out of necessity. When you start a business, all of a sudden you find out that most of business is finding customers.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so I learned that the hard way. I tried just about everything, upside down, sideways, all kinds of guerrilla marketing stuff to try to build a business. And I guess that's where I learned mostly what not to do.
Okay.
And a little bit later on, I stumbled into in-home services sales. So working for companies that sell roofing, siding, windows, kitchens, baths, and eventually HVAC.
Mhm.
I really learned about sales process and how you could use sales process to an advantage by being able to focus your energy on uh, whatever weak spot you have and being able to elevate your game that way to make some serious money.
Okay. So tell me, who are most of the people that you work for, Michael?
Today, mostly HVAC companies, smaller kind of mom and pop, maybe under $5 or $10 million HVAC companies. That's where our focus is today. But most of my experience comes from in-home services of really any sort.
Okay. So I have a question for you. Um,
Yeah.
what is the biggest mistake you find that home services companies make in sales?
That anyone could do it. That hey, John, you've been with us for a couple of years. You've been fixing systems. You're a good technician. I like you. You have a nice smile. You're our salesman. And quite frankly, most people can't do the job. Certainly not at a high level.
Mhm. I was interested listening to somebody the other day, and he said the one of the some of the worst salespeople are craftsmen, because you're trying to make the transition from craftsman, right, to entrepreneur or to salesperson.
Yep.
And somebody mentioned that if you have an HVAC guy goes in and he's a craftsman, he's going to figure out any way he can to fix the broken thing, right? Like,
Correct.
spend all
That's
his
in his
time and
blood.
energy
Yeah.
fixing something that should be replaced, because he gets personal gratification out of fixing something that's broken because he's a craftsman, versus how to put something what the client really needs, which is a new HVAC system, right?
100% correct.
And
Yeah, that's
so a
100%
lot of
correct.
times craftsmen do not make great salespeople.
No, and most people don't make great salespeople because again, coming from the in-home services background, there's so many different angles to selling, right? But there's also different price points. And if you're in the in-home services marketplace and you're selling top line product, it
Mhm.
takes nothing short of relentless level of training to be able to do that. When you're selling a window that may be two or three times more than the competitors, and justifiably so, the customer is pretty much zeroed in on that number, and to move them off of that number into value takes a couple hours in the house of very precision scientific kind of training.
So do you think salespeople are born or trained?
Anybody can be trained to be better. I think most people have either some level of it already in them. They're a leader. Their friends, follow their suggestion on where to hang out tonight or what restaurant to go to. They can kind of get people to follow them in general and get people to listen to them and kind of command the space. That helps a lot. That guy can probably be a top performer. But really, anybody, if they just follow a system and a process and let go of the ego and the control and just do things in a methodical way, they can all improve dramatically.
Okay, so tell me, as an example, what is a sales process that you do from, let's follow up through the phone rings, you take a lead, and then you're gonna go to you make the appointment. From the appointment, just follow me from making the appointment all the way through to closing the sale.
Goodness. Okay. In an HVAC scenario, we'll assume that this is a marketed lead for replacement.
Right.
So
So
this is
let's say the lead comes in from like, I don't know, Facebook or whatever. They've got some kind of marketing system. And the person
sure.
calls up and says, I'm in Phoenix. It's really hot. My HVAC system is broke and I need somebody to come out and fix it or get me a new one.
Well, that's two very different things. So, if it was what we'll call a service demand call, meaning someone wanted their system fixed, that's very different than a sales call. But if we went that path and they called in for a repair, first it would be the job of the CSR to use a tool to identify if that system is aged or not.
Okay.
So if it's a repair and it's a 5-year-old system, it'd be handled very differently than if it's a repair, let's say, a 15-year-old system. And by questioning the customer and finding out it's a 15-year-old system, at that point, you would send a technician that was either a selling tech that's trained to turn that into a sale, or one that's trained to turn it over to the sales team.
Okay. So
But that would be
they show up, they knock on the door, knock, knock, walk me through. Hi, I'm from ABC HVAC company. How do you develop, we got to go know, like, trust, right? So how do you work through that system from point one to where they're closing the sale?
Well, if you don't mind, Paul, rewind to let's just assume it's a sales call with a comfort
Okay.
advisor. A sales
Right.
professional is going to the house. So first, the lead would come in, and the office would set that up for success. Right? They're going to call the
Right.
customer. They're going to make sure they actually want replacement. They don't want repair. They're going to make sure that they're going to get both of the homeowners available for a good 60 to 90 minutes, so that the guy has a chance. Right?
Right.
So that's all set up first. Now, once the rep goes and knocks on the door, from the moment they enter, they're going to go through what's typically a 10-step selling process,
I'd love to
which
hear
is
the 10 steps. Let's go.
absolutely, well, depends on the company. We use a 7-step system, but the
Okay.
idea here is that in the very first step, as you mentioned, you're gonna make an introduction, a first impression, kind of set out the agenda, let them know what to expect. Like, hey, I'm going to be here for a while. We're going to be going together through your house. I'm going to be taking measurements and photos, doing an engineering analysis. I'm letting them know that it's going to take some time, and that I need their involvement. And at that point is when I need to identify getting both homeowners involved and or resetting that appointment to be in front of both homeowners.
Okay. So
So
you
once
have you have all the decision makers there, or you're not going to do it, right?
yeah, well, we try to have all
Okay.
the decision makers there. But anyway, so we got to get everyone involved, let them know it's going to take a while, and get their commitment to that. And at that point, we start to do kind of I call it recon. You've got information you need to get for your team, like measurement specifications, sizes, load calculation, all of that. But that's also your opportunity to buy enough time, maybe a half an hour, an hour, to get that customer to let their defenses down, realize you're just a friendly human being trying to help them.
Okay.
When you knock on that door, every guard is up, every lie comes out. They really treat you almost as the enemy,
Right.
and you want to use the engineering analysis or your measurements and things, information you need to gather anyway, as an opportunity to kind of get to know them and look for something that you can maybe chat about, something that looks like it's important to them, to get them talking. Either way, the point is, in step 2, you need to bond enough that when you sit down at the table next, what you say, eh, they'll listen to.
So how do you successfully bond? You talk about their dog, their kids, their cat. I mean,
Whatever
how
you
do you
think matters
bond
to
with
them.
somebody?
Well, it's a story I told. This is a good one. You want them to talk, right, Paul? So the
Right.
idea here is that I need to find something that's important to them, because they're going to love telling me all about it.
Yeah, the more they
So
talk, the smarter you get, right?
right. So, well, I'm also investigating things like, is there an air purifier in this room, or a fan, or a window opener draped shut, that they give me tools to sell later on equipment. I'm also looking for something like a quilt or a folded flag. Or the example I like to tell people is a story that happened to me, and it was an older woman, and we were in her dining room, and she had probably about 100 plates in that room around the ceiling, like on a shelf.
Mhm.
And I couldn't really relate to that because I don't collect plates. So I didn't lie about it. I just said, what's up with all the plates? You
Right.
eat on a different one for each day of the week, or And she said no. She was actually before my husband passed recently. What we did is when we traveled, we always tried to collect a plate from the place that we visited to kind of remember the
Mhm.
experience. I said, okay, so when you walk in here, this is kind of like you can relive your history with your husband, right? And then I asked her, which can you tell me what that plate is right there? And of course, she remembered every detail of that trip vividly. It was 30 years ago.
Okay.
And so she opened up to me, and it was really kind of an emotional thing, and it was really genuine though. And when we were done with that, I'll just say that, compared to when I knocked on the door, when I started to talk about equipment options and choices, she looked at me more as a trusted advisor than
Right.
someone trying to take her money. That's all. It's just trying to get people to realize you're there to help them, and you're not there to trick them. And for every reason, they have every right to feel you're going to trick them because they've had probably a bad experience with an
Right.
untrained or unprofessional salesperson many times in their life. And
Right.
so that's not bad people. They just don't know that you're different and you're trying to help them.
Okay. All right. So what's next?
Okay. Well, in HVAC, the next thing would be step three is, well, and you probably know it's company story, right? I need to let them know who they're dealing with. But again, I want them to say things. I don't want to put words in their mouth. So, hey, Paul, can you tell me what you know about XYZ heating and cooling? How did I get here today?
And I would say,
And
well, I read a couple of Google reviews. They seem to be pretty good. I talked to somebody, my neighbor 3 years ago used you guys and they thought you were good or whatever, right? I come up with some why I called you versus somebody else.
there's probably a real reason. And
Right.
when I get that reason, hey, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. We work really hard on our reviews. In fact, if you didn't know, and of course you've got supporting materials here with you, a book or an iPad. If you didn't know, we've have over 1,800 5-star reviews on Google, and we maintain a plus rating with a Better Business Bureau. But thank you for that. We've been around for 15 years. We're a family-owned company, and if you didn't know, we're really big at contributing, giving back to the community in many ways. And I'm really digging there. I'm trying to find this is a conversation, not a speech, right?
Mhm.
So as I'm slowly walking through some of these specifics, I'm trying to get their attention, see if they perk up or they say, "Oh, how do you give back? We like to support, the local, pet shelter." So and
Right.
get that conversation going is really what I'm trying to do, and find
Okay.
out what's important to them.
Okay.
So you get to the company story, and then we're going to start to let them know about the product, the demonstration, right? Let them know what's out there. When heating and cooling is pretty simple, I like to break it down by outdoor unit, indoor unit, what type of filtration, thermostat, and warranty. And using a good, better, best kind of selling methodology, we're trying to help them make those individual choices together. It's kind of like a team, like a menu almost.
Mhm.
And as they start to select those options, you're kind of figuring out where you are. Are they picking what they think is going to be the cheapest option every time, or are they showing you on individual options and choices that maybe they care more than the minimum on air quality, or maybe they care more about having remote access to the thermostat? So we're
So
slowly
basic
trying to gauge
so basically you're using small yeses to get the big yes, right? Like I
that.
want this thermostat. So you're working with them to get them to start saying yes in some way. I want this thermostat or I want this kind of air quality
You're
and trying to
correct. So good, better, best, as you know, it's not about do you want a thermostat or not. It's about which one do you want. And
right,
you do that again and again and again, but it gives you a lot of information because you can figure out who your customer is, what's important to them, what's not, and where there's more interest and where you need to spend more time when you start to show them some statistics and slides and consumer reports and other materials. So trying to figure out who you're dealing with before you get really specific.
mhm,
And and especially in HVAC, because nobody knows what this stuff is.
right,
It's a box. They have no idea what's in the box, so they just want the cheapest box.
right,
Once they start to understand a little bit more and they make specific choices of why I want a heat pump instead of an air conditioner, why I want a variable speed furnace instead of a single stage. And once you've done that slow by slow, before you even get to pricing anything, they have to know what they're buying, right?
right,
It, at the end, they see a package A, package B. Well, what's that? Well, remember earlier when we picked the? Oh, yeah, yeah. They have to know what they're choosing, or they can't make a decision.
right. Well, how do you do, I mean, like variable speed pump versus fixed pump or some kind of a, circuit protection thing or air quality? How do you dive deeper into those without losing them technically?
Exactly, and we do it without doing anything technically. It's more of a what features and benefits are going to affect them. So if I was talking about air quality, I'd start by probably showing them a video that explained how a system works that does maybe agglomeration, getting the small particles to clump, right? And then I might show them a video on or chart on UV light, how it can kill mold and bacteria. Just trying to gauge their interest. But then when you lay it out, it's like, hey, you have filtration. You have filtration with ionization. You have filtration with ionization and UV. But you're not talking about the specs. You're talking about this kills mold and bacteria. This kills viruses. This just makes you maybe not have as many boogers in the morning.
Right.
So you're really just trying to see what level they're at. But in my investigation in step two, I should have already found out, did I see air purifiers in a room? And did I dig in and say, whose room is it? How old is John? How bad are his allergies? I should already have that type of information as I'm explaining
Mm-hmm.
the different air quality systems, and not talking about numbers and specs, but about solving their problems.
Okay. So now you're having this communication, right?
Mhm.
What's the next step after that?
Well, once they've kind of given me an idea of what they're looking for, it's simply a matter of kind of creating a quote. So building out some options that make sense based on all the information I've gathered in the previous hour, and letting them choose. Really, I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make in sales and techs and HVAC is that they don't give people options. They say, this is what you should buy, yes or no. And it's like, no, you don't control their budget or their money. It's really important to say, hey, this is the bare minimum that you could go with. Here's a step up from that. Here's probably what most of my customers do. And here's a couple of premium options, and just lay them out in front of them and let them pick. But the problem in the industry is that the way most systems are set up to build a quote, it can take a technician or a salesperson half an hour to build one quote.
Right.
So what are you going to do? Make them sit there for 5 hours, trying
Right.
to give them some. No, your system has to be built for that, and use some standardized pricing, some standardized combinations or templates, so that within 5 or 10 minutes you can go boom, boom. Here's several options, Mr. Customer.
Now, do you ever ask them for a budget up front?
Uh, Depends on how, if they're price sensitive or not. When you're picking some of these options, it's got some round kind of numbers, at least in the system I use, near the bottom, where they can kind of see that as they're picking these options that they're spending more and more money. When it comes to budget, if they're pushing and pressing, sometimes we'll go something along the lines of, Paul, what would you, how much have you saved for the project so far? And then maybe a follow up would be, would you guys be comfortable with, without taking food off the table, Paul, $50 a week, $60 a week, $70 a
So,
week?
so you sell weekly, not total price.
It's, again, I don't sell weekly at all. It's, if the customer presses me on price before we have a chance to really get to the price conditioning, at that point, I won't run from it. I'll ask them, okay, sure. How much have you saved? What are you looking for on a weekly basis? But I try to avoid that question until they've built enough value to ask that question.
Okay. So that's let's say there's an HVAC system that's, 30,000 versus one that's 10,000. Just throwing some numbers out. Okay.
Okay.
How do you validate the 30,000 versus the 10,000 one? Because I'm sure you're really good at this. You've got people do upsells and you're successful at that. So how do you pull that off?
But it's the opposite. So rather than, again, the old time was kind of good, better, best. It's more best, better, good now. So you want to stop, theoretically with the rock at the top of the hill, and kind of roll that rock down the hill if you need to. So when I'm giving my presentation, when I'm talking about things like air quality and efficiency, we're using an efficiency calculator to show them how much they could potentially save on their energy bills. I'm building that to the top level. I'm building that to the $25,000 or $30,000 system.
Right.
And so when we present price, it's going to be at that point, here's what we've been talking about. And if we want to get the price down, we're going to have to give things up
Okay.
and push that ball down the hill.
So you sort of use, if this is this is the best system, this system has everything you want, right? We're all good.
Yep.
But
Yep.
then the question is, what do you want to live without? You want to live without the air quality. You want to live without the variable speed motor. You want to live without the control that you can do it from your car before you show up to your house. Those kind of things.
Certainly, but in more of a, as they press for, well, that's probably out of our budget range. Okay, well, let's look at this option here, and this option here, it's still an excellent air quality system. It doesn't have the UV light, but it still has the agglomeration, which will get the dangerous stuff out of the airstream, and it's still going to make the home smell better. So yeah, that will work just fine. This system's a little bit less efficient, but it's still going to save you a fortune on your current system. Is that how you'd like to move forward today? No,
Okay.
so it's just a very slow process that, at the close, when you start to show pricing, it can take a half an hour, or longer than that.
Okay. So you use the alternative choice close, right? A or
Yep.
B. And then you work them through, then how do you work the objections? That's too much money. I need to talk to 3 other guys. My neighbor did it for half the price.
Yep.
You're going
That's
to get
exactly
objection.
right. And that is built into, and again, we don't have a 2.5 hour time frame here to walk through the entire
Right.
process, but you have to block those objections well in advance. So when we're telling our company story and we're telling our product demos, we're closing those doors, and to essentially eliminate those objections from happening later on.
Right.
So
So
there's a
you have a list.
conversation you have. Go ahead.
So you have a list of classic objections, like I can get it cheaper someplace else. I've talked to 3 people, whatever. There's probably 10 or 15 objections total, right? That you get. And you already have,
Well, yeah, I think there's one objection personally,
what's that?
but well, we know it costs too much. I
Okay.
can hide behind I need time to think about it, but if I cut the price in half, you probably wouldn't have to think about it. So you know, um, I think it's mostly price, and that's what most people think bids are protecting them from. So when you have that conversation in the beginning of the call, and you mention something along those lines in your company story, and say, "Could you see here how bids may or may not protect you? What is a bid protecting you from, Paul?
I don't want to
What
pay too much.
exactly is it? Okay,
I
from
don't,
a number.
right.
So we're going to assume it's all the same equipment with the same level of installation, right? The same level of expertise. How do you know the quality of the installation of the company and the service in advance of installation? How do you know that?
I don't.
Right. So these supporting documents we're looking at together, from Consumer Reports and other buyer's guides for homeowners, show that prices may be fifth or sixth on the list of priorities when you pick a new system. Would you agree, Paul?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, I want to get the best system at the best price.
Obviously, absolutely. Yeah, that's what everybody wants.
That's
But
right.
that price is not going to be the lowest price.
Okay.
The
So
best
then,
doesn't come from the least, right?
that's right.
Right.
And so you keep answering those objections. I'm going to ask you a question. Michael, you've done this. How many times do you think you have to close to get a final yes? Once, twice, 5 times?
Well, and I was trained along these similar lines early on, and I agree with you. And most of these systems are built to overcome objections at the end, and they take
Right.
multiple swings. But things I've learned from companies in the last 7 or 8 years is that we want to bring all of those objections up in advance, and discuss them, and eliminate them well before you ask for the money. So in the old way of doing it, and a lot of companies, I mean, consumers don't have that patience anymore. I mean, 10 years ago, you might sit there for an hour after they tell you no, and you call your manager and you go through another objection and another objection and another
Right.
objection. But the way the system has evolved, even the companies I know that sell at absolute top price, they may take 2 or 3 stabs at the end. And it's usually going to be along the way, like we mentioned with the rock, right? Is a
Right.
takeaway saying, okay, well, should we revisit a less expensive option today? But no, Michael, I do want the good stuff. I just don't want to overpay for. Right. That's what most people want. You want quality. You just want to make sure you're getting a fair price. And at that point today, you're going to use a fair price guarantee. You're going to use some type of a price protection offer, some type of an incentive that saves them some money today, or at least soon, to build some urgency there. But my goodness, it's about the last stat I heard, Paul, was that for every $7,000 that you ask for in the house, it takes an hour to earn.
Wow. So a question for Michael. Now, well, tell me some examples of how you may have improved somebody's closing ratio from X to Y and how you pulled that off.
Uh, doing what I was taught at other companies, which is using a process. Now, by using the consistency of going through a 10-step process in the home every time, it allows the representative and and their manager to identify, weak spots. So after, the roller coaster of the appointment's done and after the emotion settles down, you can have an honest conversation with a good rep that's following process and wants to improve. They'll just embrace process. They'll be very successful because now we can go back together and have a conversation and identify that in step 2 in section B, we maybe didn't, carry the ball all the way across the line. So now for the next week, we're going to focus on step 2, part B, until we get that ball across the line. And now we fix that. But you're going to do that for every piece of every step and slowly lift each of those pieces so that over time, that rep's numbers double and triple. This isn't 10% improvement. This is a rep that wings it in the house and probably relies mostly on price. When they use a system and hold themselves accountable to training on it day after day, month after month, and many months, this tip happens where you're starting to sell more and more premium equipment, more and more high dollar equipment, and more, sales in the home on that first call. And every rep that I've trained because 9 out of 10 resist this stuff. The ego's too powerful, Paul. The ego is far too powerful. But the 1 in 10 that will really get behind process and training and embrace that and take advantage of that time they've got behind the windshield to learn and grow. Everyone I've ever worked with, and these are not, what do you want to say? These are not slick salespeople. Okay. These are just kind of average folks. These are not unicorns. They're just people that put the work in. They see their numbers. They go from $100,000 earning $100,000 a year to earning 200 and 300, which you can imagine what that does for the companies they work for.
Right. Absolutely.
It's phenomenal. It sounds too good to be true, but because it's not a magic pill. It's not a guru you can hire for 2 weeks to come in and get your team riled up. It's not one book that you read. Process is just a way of running your sales team and a way of living. And it takes months and months and months of effort for it to really pay off.
So when you work with a client, let's say you've got an HVAC company does, I don't know, 2.5 million a year, pick a number, 3 million a year.
Yep.
And they're selling new units or mostly in homes. How long does it take? Give me some specific examples of how long it took you to increase sales from A to B.
Okay. There's a lot of factors to play here, but essentially the one that makes the biggest difference to move the ball the fastest forward is you have to have a level of professionalism in selling. In other words, you can't just do this with, your current staff. Probably, maybe some of them can, but the idea here is that just building on turnovers. Most of the coaches I've worked with and seen, they're teaching companies, their HVAC companies, how to have their technicians start to turn age equipment over to a team or to sell it. Push all that aside. If you use the in-home sales processes that most companies that do in-home services use and apply it to HVAC, now you're going out and buying marketed leads, which are very risky if your people aren't trained properly. Because if you're spending $100 a lead to get half of them to set, and you get 5 set and 1 sells, well, maybe you can put that into your budget and live at that with that formula.
But you're paying $1,000 a sale or something like that, right?
Right. You can build that in. But if you're using someone that's not trained to leverage process to close at that ratio, and you're selling it less than that ratio with a marketed lead, now you're losing money. So once you have that formula figured out and you have to build in that 500, 1,000, or 1,500, that's real, and you can count on that number, you can go to the market and buy leads as fast as you can possibly hire people to do the work.
Okay.
There's no more slow season. There's no more, oh, it's nice outside. It doesn't really exist if you have that formula. And so we try to get that formula established immediately, which can take a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months to know it's safe. And at that point, we start to spend more and more on marketed leads. The results that I've seen with companies that I've worked with and at other non-HVAC companies is numbers like, well, actually one company I work with, for example, we were around $80,000 a month when I joined the organization. It took a lot. It took a lot of work. Those first couple of months was a lot of shifting mindsets and allowing people to think differently and become more of a sales company. But once we get our groove on after 2, 3 months, then those sales went from 100,000 a month to 200 a month to 300 a month to 400 a month to 500 a month to $1 million a month to 2 million a month.
Whoa. Must
Yeah,
have been a huge market. Where was that physical location?
that was in Western Washington, Seattle.
Western Seattle?
You know
You
what?
said the HVAC in Seattle? I mean, it never gets hot in
It,
Seattle.
it ain't that hot there. Yeah,
No,
so it's even more miraculous, right?
right. I
Um,
mean, that's amazing.
it is, and the company revenue, came, 90% of revenue came from replacement sales, residential replacement sales, and the rest of the
Wow.
company's revenue came from some service, a little bit of electrical and plumbing work, some maintenance contracts, but it was almost completely driven by residential replacement. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen every time in every market, but there's a lot more to it when we come in, and I don't want to talk too much about us. Just
Well, the ROI on that must have been off the charts, right? I mean, oh my
it's
God.
about at the end, it was about 20 times growth spurt in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and
That's
and
amazing.
really, what slowed that down was during COVID, and you couldn't get in people's houses, you couldn't get into the box stores to get leads, and it was incredibly difficult getting equipment,
Right.
and we gave up. I can't tell you how much opportunity and that we missed because we didn't have the equipment to grow, and we could not hire enough qualified people fast enough to grow faster than that. The only thing that limited that growth was not having enough qualified people to do the work. If
Wow.
we could have, we hired as much as we could. We did grow a lot of people, but that was the limiting factor, not the sales. It became a limiting
Wow.
factor of doing the work properly.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, that's really impressive. So, um, you just work with HVAC companies, no other service companies like roofing or nothing, just so I know, and we can tell our
No,
listeners.
I help out. I have a few folks I kind of give tips and mentor that are in other industries like windows or roofing. I just try to help them out because I like to help people. As far as for hire, what we do is work with HVAC companies, preferably again small ones
Mhm.
that don't have too many systems in place already. When they get to be 10, 20 million, good luck, because to do this right, you have to handle it from the marketing side and the offer and the lead to the appointment set to the sale. And a lot of folks, it's really hard to give up that kind of control.
Right.
So we come in typically doing sales training just to get the numbers up and help their guys sell more, and then slowly trying to help them evolve to
So if you've got an HVAC company that's doing 2 million, wants to do 10 million, that would be somebody you'd be interested in working with, right? Over five
That's a
years.
no-brainer. That's really not complicated at all. In fact, most of the companies we work with, um, that we talk to, at least once we get to know them, you have to kind of feel out how open they are to change. A lot of
Mhm.
companies don't want to do anything. We
Right.
meet, we part ways.
Right.
But if they're open to some change and they want to grow rapidly, we typically shoot for doubling their sales for replacements in 3 months, and then to do that,
Wow.
and then to do that again in 3 months, and then to do that again in 3 months.
That's a multiple of 9 in a year.
Yeah,
Wow.
but I mean, we're not talking about starting with a $10 million company. We're talking, somebody's maybe 1 million, 2 million. You get
Right.
them from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8.
Right. Cool. That's amazing. Well,
Right.
obviously that sounds like an awesome deal. So Michael, if people want to get a hold of you, how do you vet your people? How do you have people a hold of you? Are you willing to talk to them, like for the discovery call? How's it all
Oh, of
work?
course. That's what it all starts with. Just a quick phone call, really casual, just kind of a chit chat to see where they're at. We don't pressure folks at all. In fact, Paul, one thing that's unique about us, if you didn't know, is that we actually get paid for performance.
Really?
So that means that when we take on a client, it's only after we've all kind of come to an agreement that we can work together and make this happen. And then once they have success and once the numbers start to happen, that's when they pay us. That
That's
not in
amazing.
advance. It's
So
a
you
little
actually,
unusual, but
that's pretty unusual if you actually
it's
get
pretty
paid for
unusual.
performance.
And
That's pretty amazing.
it is unusual, but it's because we have to be careful who we work with,
Hmm.
because I putting 3, 6, 9 months of effort in. If I don't have the support of the company and the team, then my hands are tied.
Right.
So we're really looking for almost a partner and someone that's willing to make some changes and willing to grow, and then kind of teaming up to make money together.
Do you spend a lot of time on site actually, or do it by phone, by Zoom? How do you train people?
Initially it's very hands-on. So depending on the size of the company, there's 4 of us, by the way. We may be in the company's office 12 or 16 or 18 hours a week for the first 3 months.
Wow.
We may only be there 4 hours a week. So yeah, this is a different mentality. We don't tell you what to do and give you some charts and graphs and books to read and videos to watch. We actually come in and do the work and take full responsibility for it, because
So you
again,
like become their
paid on
outsourced,
commission.
become their
I'm
like
sorry.
you become their outsourced sales manager for a while.
I like the idea of part-time sales
Okay.
manager.
Part-time outsourced sales manager. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. And
Working on
and
commission.
working on commission. There's the key word right there, because that's how the teams we build get paid. It's only fair that that's how we get paid for results.
Well, that sounds amazing. So Michael, how do people get in touch with you?
I just, I'm on there. You got the Google there. It's Michael Cady, Cady. You'll find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook or something. Instagram, I think. Not on TikTok. Not going to find me on TikTok.
And it's cadycoaching.com, right?
Yeah, it is cadycoaching.com. And just the best way to reach us is our phone number, which is that okay to share here?
Absolutely.
All right. It's just 808-808
I know that's Hawaii.
HVAC.
That's how you got me. I mean, I'm an 808.
Yeah.
How many people are in 808, man?
Well, it's easy to remember. 808 HVAC, but we travel all over the United States to work with
That's
Michael.
amazing. Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate being here. And if you're an HVAC company, you don't call this guy, I think you're crazy. That's my own opinion. All right.
I can't get a better endorsement than that, Paul.
Have a good one,
Sincerely,
Michael. I appreciate your time.
thanks for the time, sir. You have a great weekend.
Thank
Take
you.
care.